If you'd asked me a year ago if someone should buy a NAS for home use, I'd have laughed at you. NAS is for big companies with big networks, is what I probably would have said. 5 years ago, I'd still have laughed, but I would have said, well, they're for small businesses too. In fact, I'm installing one in mine for backup. But today, it's different. Now, we all deal with tons of data. Small businesses, individuals, and families all have tons of data, and more, we rely on cloud services. Cloud is great, but when it comes to cloud, people have security concerns, privacy concerns, and there's the monthly cost of cloud storage. So maybe now is the time to consider installing a NAS in your home or business. So what is a NAS? Well, one way to think of it is it's just a really big hard drive connected to your network. But that's all cloud storage is. It's just someone else's really big hard drive on the internet. So having a NAS is kind of like having your own cloud service, but where you own the hardware, you don't pay any monthly fees, and you're not limited to your internet bandwidth speeds when the NAS is sitting on your local network. So in this video, we'll be talking about a very specific NAS, the UGREEN NAS DXP 4800 Plus. UGREEN sent this to me to do a video on, and I very quickly got it integrated onto my network and started working with it. And I gotta say, this thing is cool. It's got a lot of neat features, and I'm gonna show you a whole bunch of them, plus explain in some detail how I'm using it in my own YouTube studio. And at the end, I'll show you how you can get 20% off of your own UGREEN NAS. So let's dive in. First, let's talk hardware. The DXP 4800 Plus is a 4-bay plus 2 M2 slots NAS. UGREEN makes bigger ones, by the way. I've got the 4-banger here that are super easy to set up, takes standard hard drives or SSD drives, so you can fill it up however you like, with up to 136 terabytes of storage, has tons of hardware connections, a really robust operating system, and a bunch of apps. So let's get specific. UGREEN sent 4 4-terabyte drives for me to work with, which gave me 16 terabytes of storage, but you can install up to 136 terabytes. That's 4 30-terabyte drives, plus an additional 2 8-terabyte M2 chips. If you max it out, UGREEN estimates that to be about 47 million photos or 92,000 movies. So, probably more than you have on your iCloud account. Now, when it comes to actually choosing drives to install, you have a ton of choices. UGREEN has wide compatibility with third-party spinning disk and SSD drives, and have a compatibility list on their website which gets regular updates based on user feedback. The drives are really easy to install with no tools needed. The drives snap into the sleds with a clever little lock mechanism that's really easy to use. Also, when you format the RAID, you can choose your RAID striping. RAID 0 is going to be the fastest and biggest RAID, where all drives are part of the data pool. However, it's also the highest risk. If any one drive fails, you lose all data. So if you're going to do RAID 0, which is what I did on mine, then you definitely need to have a local backup, and we'll talk about how to do that later on. A RAID 5 means that one disk is what's called a parity disk, which means that you give up the equivalent of one drive's worth of storage, but you can lose any one drive to disk failure, replace it, and the RAID will rebuild itself. It's kind of RAID magic. RAID 5 is a little slower than RAID 0, just so you know. Then there's RAID 6, which uses 2 drives for parity, so any 2 drives can fail simultaneously, but again, you give up 2 drives worth of data. Definitely not the right choice for a 4-disk RAID like this one, but it may make sense on larger RAIDs with more critical data. It's all up to you. The NAS has 2 Ethernet ports on it, a 10 gigabit and a 2.5 gigabit port. Not everyone has a 10 gig network, so of course you can also use this on any regular home 1 gigabit network. But, and this is important, your local access is only as fast as your local network. The NAS has a bunch of USB ports that we'll talk about in a bit. However, you cannot mount this NAS as a USB volume, only as a network volume. So if you only have a standard 1 gigabit network at home or in your office, then you are limited to 1 gigabit transfer speeds, which is still a lot faster than most internet connections, but the only way to get full 10 gig transfers is to have a computer with 10 gig Ethernet connection and a 10 gigabit switch on your network. If, however, you do want high-speed local file transfers without the 10 gig Ethernet and without the 10 gig switch, then I recommend that you consider a different model of the UGREEN NAS, which includes Thunderbolt 4 ports, giving you direct connection at a very high speed. Those models are the DXP 6800 Pro, the DXP 8800 Plus, or the DXP 480T Plus. Just about everything else I'm going to tell you about this 4800 model will apply to those as well, so even if you opt for one of those models, keep on watching. The NAS also has several USB ports on the front and back, and these can be used to connect camera card readers, SSD drives to copy files from or to, drives to use as a local backup, a UPS, just about anything. Plus, it has an SD card reader built right in, right on the front. We'll talk later about how you can copy media directly to the NAS to get some pretty cool workflows going. It even has an HDMI port, which is for video playback, so you theoretically could connect this to your TV and use it as a media player, although that feature is currently in beta. And finally, what really makes this whole thing interesting is the multi-user setup. Everyone in the office or family can have their own private piece of the RAID, and you can easily control who has access to what data. The multi-user workflow is where this thing really shines, so we'll be talking about that more throughout. Setup was remarkably easy, and I used the UGREEN NAS app on my iPhone for the initial setup. The app found the NAS on the network automatically shortly after turning it on and walked me through the setup, including explaining all the RAID options. It took less than 10 minutes to get it all configured. All right, now let's have a look at the App Center, which will give you some ideas on all the things you can do with this NAS, even though we won't be diving into all of them. Let's have a quick look at the UGREEN NAS app. This is a full desktop app that is essentially an interface to the NAS, and it has a bunch of apps, and it looks like you're just working on a computer. I can get into my files in here. I can get into the control panel for the NAS. All of this operates as little mini apps within the control software here. Where I want to go first, though, is the App Center. Think of it like the App Store, just so you can see what all this thing can do. I'm just going to scroll through here and take a quick look yourself at the different type of apps that are in here. But you have photo and video and music apps. There's a web browser. There are cloud drive utilities. There's sync and backup. There's just a ton of stuff in here that you can install, and more is coming. So this is how you get to everything in here. One of the ones that we're going to be spending some time with is the Photos app. This is a really cool little app that does some pretty amazing stuff with your photos, and it does a lot of it with AI. Now, when I first got this thing set up, I went ahead and installed the Photos Sync app onto my iPhone and let it start syncing over all of my photos. And I've got about 32,000 photos on my phone that have all now synced over to the NAS. And from here, we can explore what it can do with all of its little AI tools. It's pretty slick, so check this out. This will probably look pretty familiar. It's just an album of all of your photos in here, and you have your own personal albums that you can jump into and so on. But you'll notice that I have albums for people and locations and videos and all this kind of thing. Well, to get all this set up, you actually first have to go up to the settings, go to the Intelligence tab, and then turn on the things that you want. So I've turned on people recognition, text recognition, duplicate photo recognition, scene and object recognition, pet recognition. I didn't turn on the auto recognition of potentially sensitive content because I don't care. And then there's image recognition and model training package. So these are all different things in here that you can turn on individually if you want. So let's just say I'll go to the people. Click on the people album. There's a whole bunch of people that are in my library. I can go in there. There's me. So I'll just call me Joseph. And now when I open that up, of course, I'm going to see all the photos that have me in it. Pretty standard facial recognition type of stuff in here. Locations are in here as well. So if I go to locations, we're going to see my photos on the map. As I scroll around in here, we'll find different places with lots of different photos. You can see that it is still building the catalog of locations. It's still got quite a ways to go on there, but those are all synced over and it's currently lining up all those photos on the map. Then there's object recognition. Now it's just grabbed a few to begin with on its own, but like say if I click on animal, this is just animal recognition. So essentially any photo in here that's of an animal, it's gonna find it and show it. And there is a dog in that photo, that's why it's there. So that's pretty cool. Look at all kinds of neat stuff in here like this. You can build standard albums as you would expect, but you can also build a custom album they call the baby album. And I don't have a baby, but you could take, anybody. I'll take myself, why not? And go to next on here and you can give it a name and you have to say, is it a boy or a girl? And you give it a date of birth and we're not going to put that in here. But if I put that in, then it would show photos based off of time and how old the kid is. And as you scroll through, it'll tell you things like, oh, when the baby was 1 year old or 1 year and 6 months or 3 days old or whatever. It has that whole timeline based off in there. It's pretty cool. I don't have a baby, so I can't show that to you, but it's really neat. I put my kid in there, who I'm not going to load up on here for you all to see, but it was cute. It's showing like 9 years and 8 months old and 6 days. It kind of gets really specific. It's cute. It's a fun little feature. Back under Tools, you have a few other special things like this search for similar or duplicate photos. When I click on this, it's going to automatically go through my album and look for things that could be similar, could be duplicates, and allow me to pick the best one or just find any actual duplicate files and get rid of them. So this is a nice way to clean up your library. You can see I've got a lot of my thumbnail photos in here. Easy way to clean up your library, get rid of a bunch of duplicate stuff that you might not need. So lots of really powerful tools in here. Now, part of the photo album is the ability to share it with multiple users. So in a family environment, your spouse, your kids, etc., can all have access to it. And you can all share photos to the same place. So all of your phones can all be sharing your photos into one location. And you can even set up shared albums in there and say, Junior has access to this photo, only the wife has access to these photos. And you can just set it up however you like, so it's totally customizable. It's pretty neat. So the Photos app in here is actually pretty cool. And I know that it's growing. They're adding more features to it all the time. So yeah, definitely something worth considering. Now let's talk about how I'm using it in my studio. I'm going to show you how I did some of the setup on here, user permissions, how I get media in, and how I'm using it to actually edit from. There's a lot to cover here, so bear with me, but this is really cool. If you're going to use this in this type of environment, then you're going to want to know some of this. So first of all, what am I using it for? Well, editing primarily. I mean, I'm editing off of this drive. This is currently 4 streams or 5 streams, or in some cases more, of ProRes 422 4K video. So it's playing that back, no problem. I can hit play on here. We play through this. That's great. So the performance there works out really, really well. It is important to understand where your performance is coming from in a setup like this. So let's talk some numbers. First of all, your bandwidth of the network at 10 gigabit is the same as 1,025 megabytes per second. But that is a theoretical limit. That's the pipe. That's as big as it can go. The drives that are in the RAID are going to play a huge part in the performance you actually get. Now, I'm not getting those speeds on this NAS because this NAS only has 4 drives that each have a maximum read speed of about 200 megabytes per second. So theoretically, the maximum I can get with my setup is 800. I get closer to 600 because there's always some overhead. That's still plenty to do the editing that I just showed you on, but I'm not going to get that full maximum speed because there just isn't the hardware to support it. So how do you get those bigger speeds? Well, you can install faster hard drives. You can install more hard drives. If you have more drives, then they kind of combine the speeds and you get a bigger through speed. And you can add the M2 chips, which act as kind of a cache, if you will, to take that initial copy super, super fast. So there's a lot of different things you can do to speed things up. Again, the maximum you could ever possibly get is 10 gigabit or 1,025 megabytes per second, but you're never going to hit there, but you're going to get close to it. So how am I actually mounting my NAS on the computer here? Let's start with that. You see that I've got my UGREEN Media NAS mounted on the desktop. I can just double click on that like any hard drive and it mounts up there. So how is that actually connected? Well, let's take a step back. This is mounted as an SMB volume. And to set that up, you have to go into the control panel. And if you don't remember or can't find where things are, there's a great little search. So I'll just type in SMB and it shows, yep, there it is. Under File Services. So there's File Services, SMB, and that has been enabled. SMB is a common protocol for network volumes to mount them just as a regular hard drive on your Mac. This is the recommended way to go. SMB is what it is. There are other options, but this is the current, most modern way to go. Just do SMB. Once you've enabled it, it's really just a checkbox to turn it on. It'll tell you down here the local address that you can use. So on a Mac, it says go to the Finder and use SMB, and then it'll show you your IP address. So 10.01.97 for me. So that means that if I want to mount it, all I have to do is go to the Finder, go to the Go menu, choose Connect to Server, and then type in that address. And I've got a recents list in here, so I can just double click on 97. Takes a moment to access it, and then we'll see all the volumes that it has available. So the UGREEN Media is already mounted. That UG backup is a USB drive that I have plugged into it. Every user has a personal folder. I should have named mine Joseph, not personal folder, but whatever. But every user that you set up on here has their own personal folder that nobody else can get into. Unless you wanted to give somebody else access, you could as well. And then Lumix is actually a SD card that is currently inserted in the NAS. We're going to come back to that later. But the fact that it's in there connected to the NAS now means that I have access to it over the network. But we're not going to do that. Anyway, I would just double click on UGREEN Media and it would mount like that. So there we go. That's how I get this thing set up. Super, super simple. Let's take a look at a real world copy example or copy test. I have a almost 10 gigabyte file here, 9.8 gigs, and I'm just going to copy that to the top level of my NAS here. So I'll just drag and drop that over and we'll see the progress dialog come up. Less than a minute. I probably should break out a timer here, but this is going to be a pretty fast copy. Now this is 10 gigabit file, 9.8 gigabyte file that I'm copying over to my NAS. Here's the important thing. Once it's on the NAS, not only can anybody else on the network access it immediately at full speed, I can immediately create a link to this and send it to somebody anywhere in the world, and they'll be able to access that file as if it was on a cloud service, because it essentially is on a cloud drive. It's just that I own the cloud. So once that's done, there it is. Let's close these. I'll go into the Files browser inside of the UGREEN NAS software, go to the shared folder where I just put this, the UGREEN Media, and there's that file. I right click on that file and I choose Share, And I can set up permissions on here. Who am I sharing it with? People within the network or an external user. I can set a validity period. Do I want this link to expire? Do I want to allow downloads, or is it just for viewing? I can put a password. I can limit how many times someone can access it. I'm just going to leave it all at its default, click OK, and it gives me a link. It also gives me a QR code. But I'll go ahead and copy that link. I'm going to switch over to Chrome here. I've got an anonymous browser tab ready to go. I'm going to just paste that in, hit go, and obviously I'm on my local network, so it would download really quickly, but you can see there's the file ready to go, ready to download. So it makes it super, super easy to share. So again, if you're sharing files with people anywhere in the world, you don't have to wait to upload them to Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. Just stick it on your NAS, grab that link and send them the link, and away you go. That's pretty cool. Here's another really cool thing you can do. Within an app called Sync and Backup, I can sync the entire NAS or any part of the NAS to another device anywhere in the world. So if I go in here and say create sync task, first of all, do I want to sync this computer or sync to another UGREEN NAS? So first, let's just talk about that one, syncing to another NAS. If you've got another duplicate NAS somewhere else in the world, you can create a sync between them so that whatever is added to one is automatically synced to the other. And then everybody has this super high speed local access to their files. That's pretty slick. But what I'm actually using this for is to sync a part of the NAS to a computer at home. So this is obviously my computer at work, but here's how I would set this up. I go in and say sync this computer, and then I choose what I want to sync. So I choose where on the computer this is going to go, and I choose what from the NAS I want to sync. So I can grab any piece of this, hit next step, go through and confirm it, and it will start syncing. So what I actually want to show you is I am remote controlling into my computer at home. You see at the top it says Home Mac Mini. This is the local account login. I've already got the software launched, and it's ready to connect to a very simple address. Just PJ UGREEN, that's the address that I set up. And this is another really cool part of the NAS. I don't have to do any complicated port forwarding setup. I just go in and I set up remote access. I give it a unique UGREEN link ID, and of course give it a password, and I can now access my NAS from anywhere in the world with that information. So again, we're looking at my home computer over screen sharing software. I'll go ahead and connect to that NAS. And now in here you can see I've got sync and backup. And if I look at the sync folder, I already have something set up here. So this is syncing a specific folder from the NAS. It's a project that I was working on that is about 1 terabyte in size. So it's this last big YOLO box project that I made. It's a full terabyte in size, but that has synced locally to my local Mac Mini at home. And that is all sitting here on this drive, where if I look in here, there is that entire 1 terabyte folder. So this means that I can take any portion of my NAS and have it synced in real time, or as fast as my internet connection will allow, to my hard drive, my computer, somewhere else in the world. Love that. Let's jump out of my home computer and back over to this one. Okay, next I want to talk about media capture directly to the NAS. So think about this workflow. I just got off of a shoot. I've got my camera and my camera cards here. I obviously need to put that media onto my computer so that I can start editing it. Now, let's say that I've got multiple editors. I have an assistant here in the studio. He wants to be able to access the media as well. So what would I do? Well, I could take that media, copy it to my computer, and then copy that to his computer. That would be slow and tedious, and the data wouldn't be in sync. Or with a NAS, I could copy to my computer and then copy it to the NAS, and once it's on the NAS, he'd have access to it. But we can skip the entire step of copying it to my computer first. I can actually copy it directly to the NAS because it's got a card reader on the front and it has USB ports on the front, so I can plug in my own even faster card readers. So check this out. I've already got an SD card plugged into the SD card slot. So let me just open up the file browser. And here under peripherals, if I open that up, we'll see external storage. There's that Lumix card. So that Lumix card, I can dig into here just like I'm in the Finder. I can dig in and find that media. So let's find it. There it is. And I can view this however I like. Let's go to an icon view. And there's the file. So let's say I want to copy these movie files here. Okay, I'm going to open a new folder. And let's see, where is this going to go? Go into my UGREEN media. And I'm just going to create a new folder here. We'll just call this test. So now I've got this test folder. Now I'm ready to copy my media from the SD card over to the NAS. Now, little tip here, if I just drag and drop this, you see that it says move. This is, I don't know if it's a bug or if it's what, but right now there's no way to drag and drop and have it just copy. It always wants to move, which I definitely wouldn't advise doing. So let me show you how to copy the media. I could go in here, right click, copy or /move to, choose copy to, and then navigate in here to that window, which, let's be honest, that's tedious. But I found a shortcut. If I just right click and choose copy, then I can go here, right click and choose paste. Now it is essentially copy and pasting those files over. It tells me that it's been added to the task center. I can open that up and see the progress of it. And we'll see here the status of this copy. Now this is not terribly fast. It's only 80. It's going to peak at around 125 megabytes per second. The SD card reader that's built into the NAS is not the fastest in the world. Plus it's just an SD card. But we can plug in a faster card reader into the front of it. Or what I've done is plugged in a CF Express Type B card reader with the CF Express Type B card in there. So let's copy media off of that instead. I'm going to go plug that card in. Hold on. Okay, that first copy is done. The new drive is shown up here as external storage 3. And here we can see those new files. So let's just copy a few of these. Right click, copy, go over here and paste these in. And if we look at the task center now, we're going to see much higher speeds for that. Look at that, 745 megabytes per second. We're getting much, much better performance for copying the files over. So now what this means is once that copy is completed, I can go in and rename the files if I want to, move them wherever I want, but they're there. And now anybody on the network can access them at the full 10 gigabit bandwidth of the network. That's pretty cool. I'll let that copy finish in the background. And the last thing that I want to talk about in here is the fact that we can do everything you just saw from anywhere in the world. So let's take this scenario. You're on location, you're doing a shoot, and you want to get your media to your editor back home to work on. Well, I could upload everything to Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever, and then send them a link and they'll download all that media. But that means they have to download the media. So if there's a lot of stuff, it's going to take a while to download. That means they come into the studio in the morning, they open up that link, they click download, now they got to wait for all that to download. Or what I could do remotely is instead of pushing my media up to a random cloud service, I can push my media directly to my own NAS. Then when the editor comes in the morning, the media is already there. It's totally ready for them. So this provides a much faster, much better workflow. The media isn't going to some random place. It's going to your studio, your NAS directly, and now you have access to it, or whoever's in the studio has access to it right away. I love that part of the workflow. Simultaneously, they can do any editing they want, put files on there for review that you can then go in and grab from there using the technique I showed earlier, where they can just send you a link and you can watch it directly. Lots of cool things you can do like that. Now let's talk backup. Arguably the most important yet least interesting part of working with the NAS. If you're going to set up your NAS as a RAID 0, it is absolutely critical that you set up a backup. If you don't have a backup, any one of those 4 drives dies and all your data is gone. So you want to have that backup. Fortunately, it's super easy to do and it's cheap. You can buy any cheap big USB hard drive off of Amazon to do this. It doesn't have to be fast. It can be a super slow drive. It doesn't matter. It's just for backing up and you're going to make that backup happen automatically every night. Here's how it works. Once you've connected the drive, just go to the Sync and Backup app, go to Backup and Restore. And you'll see in here, I already have a backup of this NAS, plus I have a backup of this computer. So you can actually use the NAS as a backup destination for your local computer. Cool. But we're going to worry about backing up the NAS now. The way you do it is you go to Add, you would choose to back up between storage pools. The storage pool meaning the NAS is one storage pool, the USB drive is the other one. And then you just click on Next. Choose what you're going to back up. You can choose to back up just part of your NAS or the entire thing. So let's just say I want to back up my personal folder here. Hit confirm, backup destination. And here we're looking at the external devices. We saw earlier that I have a few things plugged in. These are memory cards, but this is the one that I want. My external storage, I've labeled UG backup. That is my USB drive. I click on confirm, next, and then set a schedule. And then I choose the type of backup, incremental or image backup. An image backup is basically a mirror of your system, which is great if you're just worried about keeping it up to date for today. But if you do the incremental backup, then any files that you delete from the NAS will still be on the backup, which is probably a good idea because we've all deleted a file accidentally once or twice in our lives. Then you set a schedule, when you want it to go, click next, and away it goes. And it starts the backup, and that's all there is to it. Super, super easy to set up. As we saw before, under the sync field, you can actually sync this over to another UGREEN NAS anywhere else in the world. So that's another form of backup. Then you have the cloud drives. If I open up the cloud drives, you'll see that I'm already connected to my Google Drive. These are the other services that you can currently connect to. Once you're connected to that, you can upload files to your cloud drive from here. You can download files from the cloud drive, or you can set up a sync task. Creating a sync task essentially means that 2 folders are kept in sync. That's a folder on your NAS and a folder that you've set up in Google Drive. And then whenever it's synced up to Google Drive, that means that anybody who has access to your Google Drive can get the files from there. It also means that people can put files into that folder in Google Drive and it'll automatically sync back to your NAS. So it's kind of a combination of services. You're using the traditional cloud service, in this case Google Drive, along with your own personal cloud, your NAS, and keeping those files in sync. Lots of different ways you can go about using that, and I'm sure if you think about it for a minute or two, you'll go, oh yeah, I think that, no, I know what I can do with that. Pretty cool. Overall, this is an impressive NAS. I've worked with many different brands of NAS, and this is definitely the easiest to set up and use that I've encountered. The software is very well designed, and I know that they keep adding new features, which is super fun. It has a lot of little surprises, like it even has iPerf 3 built in, so you can run network performance tests right out of the box. Totally nerdy, but really useful. If you want to learn more or are thinking of getting one, be sure to use the link and the code in the description below to get 20% off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.